In this video, we'll see how to do some basic operations with data frames. So essentially, and in most cases, we'll load data from CSV files and we will subset this data in some way and we'll generate new columns and we'll aggregate this data. So let's start with this. I will be reading a CSV file. This CSV file can be downloaded as usual from our Google Drive. You can see the address on the description of this YouTube video. So, and there you can download the CSV file. So I'll run this. So command enter in Mac. So obviously this doesn't exist. In my case, this is users admin desktop. So here I have my data. You can see that I'm typing F. And the first thing I might want to do is to select some column. So I might select user. So that's pretty standard. If I want to select multiple columns, it will be as simple as using user, then name. I need a parenthesis there. So the C notation here in R implies a vector. So what I'm creating here is a vector. So it's a vector of names. So here I selected two of them. Just to clarify, what's vector? So if I do C, for example, 1, 9, this will be a vector, but a vector of numbers, not a vector of strings. So it's as simple as that. Now, let's see how to subset in a different way. So here I have F. I replaced it, so I'll read again. So here I have F. And what I might want to do is to, for example, select the first two rows. So this is very simple, and pay attention to the notation. So 1 colon 2 means that I want 1 from 1 to 2. And here I'm not specifying anything, so this implies that I want everything. So if I wanted to do something slightly more complicated, such as selecting rows 1 and 2, and selecting columns, let's say name and age, for example. So you can see that I not only I slice the data frame by rows, but also by columns. Since we're here, so far we have seen that we have data frames and we can subset the data here. Of course, we can summarize this data, so I can do the summary of F. You can see that here the Mac version of R will report the function. So here I have a summary. So for user, for name, and for age. One important thing here is that user here is being treated as numbers. The names here, so Anna, Bobo, Mike, and Vic. So these are being treated as strings, and obviously the age are being treated as numbers. You can see that because here I have the minimum, the first quartile, the median, the mean, the maximum, and so on. So one thing you might want to do is that if you want to transform a column and treat it in a different way, such as for example factors, I will explain what factors are in a minute. I might want to do this. So I'll do F user is as.factor F user. So now this won't change the data frame. You can see it looks exactly the same, but if I do the summary now, so summary F, you can see that user appears differently. You can see it here. So user is being treated here as numbers, but once I use factor, they're being treated as factor levels. So it turns out that there's different variable types in R. We have factors, we have characters, we have factors, we have characters, we have numbers, we have dates, we have logical booleans basically. So we have different options, and it's always quite important to be sure that you are treating your data correctly. Many people don't pay attention to this, and they just import a CSV file, for example, containing dates. And if you don't do anything, and if you just import the dates as text, as strings, you won't be able to do some very interesting functions that should be used for dates, such as, for example, getting the year, or getting the month, or getting the date. So we'll see date after. So you can apply the same notation as I'm doing here. So you could do, for example, potentially you could do something like as.character. So if I do the summary of f now, you'll see that the user appears in a different way. It is certainly a character. So we have seen the very basic stuff that you can do with a data frame. There's still one thing missing that is actually very interesting, which is the str function. So the str is basically provides like a very quick overview of the data frame. In this case, I have the first one, which is obviously character. You can see the CHR there. So 2, 3, 4, and so on. Then for the name, these are being read as factors. So here I have 4 levels. So Anna, Bobo, and so on. And these are the factor levels. So these are the implicit numbers that are determined by R. And this is essentially the age, which are obviously integers. There is one function that might be useful for the future, which is, for example, which is the type of. So this function, right? So if I type it, I will see that it's there. Because this is coded in C, I can't see what's inside this function. Remember that R is coded in C. So most functions will be coded in C. Some functions will be coded directly in R. So type of here can be used in a very simple way. So type of F, it's a list. So data frames are lists. And what do lists mean? So list is essentially a collection of items. In this case, a list is a collection of vectors. Each vector contains a unique type. So in my case, the first vector is the user, which are characters. The second vector is the name, and this contains factor levels. And the third one is the age, which contains obviously numbers. So I could do potentially a similar thing. So I could do G equals, for example, KML. So this is a string, obviously, you can see there, but I could do type of G. I missed an O. So it's a character. So this is sometimes quite useful because in some situations you will be coding very complicated scripts, and you might want to cast dates into strings, strings into dates, strings into numbers. So the first thing is making sure you understand the type of function and how you can use it to retrieve the object type. One thing that I missed in the previous video, which is actually very important in R, is that the typical way we assign stuff in R is by using the equal notation. But we could do exactly the same thing by using this, which is another way of assigning a value. So you will see that these are essentially the same. So I will just run this. So D, if I type D is equal to this. At some point in the future, I will explain something that confuses a lot of people, which is the fact that you could use the equal, you could use this assignment, and you could use the global assignment. So those are 3 different ways of assigning a value to a variable. For the time being, ignore this one because this is more complicated, and just use the equal or the single one. So these two will always work.